Hey, hey, schön, dass ihr da seid zum Filmgespräch mit Luka Kain von Saturday Church. Ich bin Wilke vom Lukas Filmfestival Team und wir freuen uns sehr, dass wir Teil von Young and Queer sind. Saturday Church war 2018 Publikumsgewinner bei uns. Eigentlich hätte das ganze Young and Queer ein Happening sein sollen in der Jugendkulturkirche St. Peter mit queeren Filmen am CSD in der Kirche. Aber hey, so müsst ihr zumindest nicht vom Sofa. Vielen lieben Dank an dieser Stelle an das Jugendzentrum KUS 41, das die Filmpatenschaft ermöglicht hat. Vielen Dank an Florian und Ranjan, die für die Filmpatenschaft ein Interview mit dem Darsteller Luka Kain geführt haben. Das seht ihr jetzt, aber Vorsicht, Spoiler, guckt euch unbedingt vorher den Film an. Lukas, das internationale Festival für junge Filmfans wie euch, gibt es auch dieses Jahr trotz allem wieder. Unsere 43. Ausgabe geht vom 24. September bis 1. Oktober 2020 online, aber auch im Kino, wo die Filme eigentlich hingehören, mit aktuellem internationalen Programm für junges Publikum von 4 Jahren bis 18 plus. Also schaut nach dem Interview bei uns auf Instagram vorbei und klickt euch ab August auf lukas-filmfestival.de rein. Und Empowerment und wichtige Themen gibt es immer bei uns. Gerade dieses Jahr kann man besondere Filme gut gebrauchen. Also bis dann, wir sehen uns.
Hi, and welcome to our interview for the film Saturday Church featuring Luka Kain. First of all, hi Luka, and it's very nice to meet you and thank you for taking your time.
Hi, yeah, of course. Thank you for having me over Zoom, but it's still an honor.
I would like to introduce myself. My name is Florian, and I am using the pronouns he or him.
I'm Ranjan. I use they, them pronouns.
I'm Luka and I use he, him pronouns.
Cool.
Before we talk about the film, I would like to ask you a little bit more general question. As we all know, we are living in quite unusual times at the moment. That's also one of the reasons why we are all meeting on Zoom. So I would just like to ask you, how did you experience the last few weeks and how are you feeling at the moment?
Well, as a Black person in New York City, it's definitely a crazy time, but it's a liberating one at the same time. In some sense, I have gone out protesting. I went to the Brooklyn Liberation March this past Sunday, and at the Brooklyn Museum, and I went all the way through Brooklyn, and it was a really beautiful event, and it was based off of terrible events, but there were so many speakers, there was so much love for the Black trans community. It really was just a day of love, which I think was desperately needed, and history as well. I was really proud to be a part of it. And so while I have been devastated seeing so much pain and death and awfulness in the news, I think it's finally time for change. And I'm hoping that people continue to try to make change until there is.
Yes, thank you for sharing your impressions. And we were not really sure, do you see yourself as a part of the queer community?
Yes. I consider myself queer. I don't really try to label it too much. I do use he, him pronouns tentatively, almost. Still trying to figure out gender identity and experimenting with my own self, comfort zone and who I am, and trying to figure it out. And I think being as clear and as transparent about gender identity in yourself is helpful to the conversation. So
Considering that, what was it like to play a character that's like explicitly Black and gay / or queer, considering how you would see that?
Saturday Church was a really great film for me because I shot it when I was 16 in high school. So my journey and mental state really wasn't that different from Ulysses, especially as a Black man in the queer community, trying to find myself and get through high school and apply to college and work and shoot a film. um, it was almost therapeutic for me, to be honest. And it really was the first deep connection I feel like I could have with the community as well, because growing up, I didn't have really any queer Black role models in my community or life, which was surprising because I went to a performing arts school, LaGuardia, which has not been under fire in the news, but its community has been really examining the racist tendencies that happened in the school, or that are in every institution. It's not really unique to LaGuardia, but I did find it interesting that in a performing arts school, in the drama department, I didn't have a teacher who was queer or a teacher who was Black. But yeah, no, it was Saturday Church really did, I think, what was a really amazing experience.
Yeah. So like, would you consider that to be also like the community you were surrounding yourself with primarily during that time? And like, because you said that you didn't see yourself reflected in, at least in like this academic context, what kinds of other people or like other avenues of queer solidarity or like Black community did you have around you? And also how did you maybe find new communities?
Mostly, my family, my dad's side of the family. My sister is trans and came out after we shot the film. We actually auditioned for it together. This was before she came out. And she introduced me to Vogue actually for the audition. She performs in the city. She's from West Virginia, but she moved to New York recently in the past few years, and she performs here, and she's amazing. And she gave me a few lessons, and I did also get lessons from Kia LaBeija, who was a consultant on the film. And it was just two really quick lessons on the basic foundations of it, and then I had to stretch that out for the in the film. And it is an art form that I actually do wish to continue learning about and participating in through classes after quarantine is over, because really that's all I've been watching online. And I think the online community also is where I found a lot of queer solidarity and representation. I think it is dangerous sometimes for younger members of the LGBTQ community to wander online, but I think it's also a great tool to reach out and learn about yourself and your community. And I definitely think I had to take advantage of that, not having it in my day-to-day life.
Well, that resonates a lot with me actually as well. And I was wondering on that account also, with what kind of role models we actually like see in our daily lives, but also on screen, considering like the majority of queer films they're overwhelmingly white, and even when it's about BIPOC, it's seldomly, or there's only very, very limited kinds of roles that BIPOC and specifically Black people actually get to play or get to be. And I was wondering if you could maybe tell us a little bit about maybe your take on specifically the portrayal of masculinity for Ulysses, if you would like to share something.
Sure. for Ulysses, they are in a very uncomfortable position where they are unsure of their gender identity, but is suddenly thrust into this position of having to become the man of the house. And I think right away Ulysses doesn't identify with that. Even during the funeral, I can imagine family members coming up to them and not really, and saying something along those lines like, oh, you have to take care of your mother now and your brother. And while that is associated with masculinity and being the man of the house, I think the film shows throughout that Ulysses is very feminine, but also very strong, and can take care of themselves, but also is still trying their best to keep their family together, and find a new family. And while Ulysses is learning a lot throughout the film, all of the hardship that they go through, I think, shows exactly just how femininity and giving into femininity and letting yourself be feminine also is so powerful and has so much strength in it. And in terms of role models, India, Moore, MJ Rodriguez, and Alexia, all who play Ulysses role models in the film, are all role models to me in real life as well now. India's activism and MJ's and Alexia's as well. They all really care about the community and trans women have always been holding the community on their backs. And I'm hoping that there's more solidarity with them and that we can protect them more, because we haven't been properly or really at all. Black trans women are killed at a very high rate, especially in America. And it's terrifying, but they continue to do the work and they continue to hold the community on its back, even without that protection. And it really is inspiring to see them work not only in activism, but actors as well.
I noticed you, Luka, I noticed you using they, them pronouns for Ulysses, and that was something I found really interesting while watching the film. Since Ulysses' gender journey is never explicitly named as such, but viewing it from my perspective as like a trans person, and I definitely got very much like gender journey vibes. And I was wondering how you felt about it, especially considering the only like explicit naming of any identity concerning Ulysses is at the end with his aunt, saying that he is a gay Black boy or man, and how to maybe not reconcile, but how that is juxtaposed with what we see implicitly on.
Rose is definitely in the dark about what's going on in Ulysses' head. Damon and I did talk about it before production, and he told me it was, he didn't want to put an exact label on what Ulysses' journey was, whether he was an effeminate gay boy or if they were trans, and or non-binary. And I felt, perhaps because of my own questions about my own gender, that I'm still going through and asking about every day, that it felt more appropriate to use they, them pronouns And Damon actually did write the first draft where Ulysses was a trans woman. And I think based on casting too, because I'm not a trans woman, that was changed as well. I don't know if directly, because it was before I read the script that he changed it, but I think, sorry, Aunt Rose is definitely not in tune with Ulysses. And I think that line about being a Black gay man is very important, but I don't think it was really accurate for Ulysses specifically. And I do think it is a traumatic moment for Ulysses, or at least that's how I wanted to play it in the moment, because it's not exactly right, or right at all, even. I would like to. It's not right. And I feel like the film puts it in that light, but I definitely, I wonder how the film would look in 2020 as well, in terms of Ulysses as the main character, and maybe being more explicit in their gender journey and not just sexuality.
Just before, you already briefly mentioned the auditioning process for the film, and as far as we know, the role in Saturday Church is your first main role in a motion picture. So could you tell us a little bit more about the auditioning process and how you prepared for the film?
The auditioning process was pretty smooth. I remember getting the script on the second callback, having to read it on the bus on the way back from school, and crying on the bus, reading Ulysses' journey. And that was embarrassing, but it made me realize it was a role I really wanted to go for. And it actually wasn't even originally a role I was going to. My mother is also my manager, and I have an agent as well, but she found the role for another client on the breakdowns, and they were originally going to go in for it. And then they dropped out. They didn't want to. And she asked me, and I said yes right away. And then when I read the script, I said, oh, now I have to do the work to get this role. Not only for myself, because was I out? Yeah, oh, never mind. I was out already. So for me, but also for my sister as well. And it was a bonding moment for us. It wasn't ever really a competitive thing, because my sister and I are pretty chill people in general. And it was just a moment to get to know each other better, because she is my half sister, grew up in West Virginia. And preparing for the film, I actually was going to talk to MJ before I knew she was going to be a part of the film, because I saw her at the City Center production of Runaways by Liz Suedos. It's an amazing theater piece about runaway kids in New York City. And the original production in the 70s, don't quote me on that, actually featured a lot of actual homeless youth and gave them the spotlight to tell their story. And I was lucky enough to see it and talk to MJ briefly afterwards. And we were going to set up a meeting. And then next thing I knew, I saw her at the meeting for production. And so then we just talked there. And then, just doing the research on my own queer history and learning about the figures that have let me live a comfortable life in New York City. And yeah. Yeah, it was really. It was a moment that needed to be had. I think it was a film that was really amazing for the community, and therefore a really amazing film for me um, to experience as well.
What was it like considering like the specific context of this film and also the topics it specifically deals with Black characters and the ballroom scene, and what was it like working on a film like this? Also maybe keeping in mind what kind of target audiences the film might have, and with a white director who also talks about himself being a white cis gay man from Canada whose experiences are vastly different than those of, for example, Black trans women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he definitely created an environment where he gave the reins to the cast to call him out on any white BS. um, and and he was open and willing to listen, especially to MJ and India. I don't want to speak for them though, since they're not here.
Of course.
But I felt definitely comfortable in talking to him about anything that didn't ring true or feel right. And the target audience, I definitely feel, is for youth who don't feel comfortable at home and need to find a found family, like Ulysses does, because it's sad to think how many children in America and all over the world aren't in a home that will support them with unconditional love. And I feel like that is the target audience, but it's also a film that is educational for people who are that family, I think, if they are willing to see it. I know most of the circuit for film festivals I did speaking like this were in southern states and red states, which was an interesting experience. I would give a talk about this film that I love and that represents my community. Meanwhile, there's a Confederate rally going on like an hour away. But what I realized also is that in those communities, mostly in the cities of these southern states, the LGBT community there is so strong because they're all found family, coming from, not all of them, but a lot of them coming from families that aren't supportive. And it was really beautiful to see them rally around this film and share their stories as well. Um, and I think, yeah, that was probably the best moment of this entire journey of the film, were those few interviews and talks.
You presented the film in Frankfurt at the Lucas Film Festival, and it also won the award there.
Yeah, that was amazing. Coming to Germany, it was my first time in Germany too. It was beautiful.
And could you tell us a little bit more about, you also already you mentioned a little bit of it, but could you tell us a little bit more about the journey you made with that film, and also about the reception of the film?
Mm-hmm. Most of the interviews and film festivals were in the South, actually. But we also went to the Tribeca Film Festival in New York in 2017, which was, as a New Yorker, that was incredible to be nominated for Best Actor there. It was really a dream come true. And then we also had a screening at the actual church where the program that the film is based off of resides, and that was really amazing to be able to show the community that it was based off of, what we were, how we represented them, and to have them receive it very positively was lovely and beautiful. And then we also went to the West Coast for Outfest, and that was amazing as well. Just the love that the film got from the community itself was really validating and affirming. And then the stories that were told specifically by trans women in the audience about their struggles and how they identified with the film was, I don't want to say educational because that's not what it was for. It was for them. But it was a learning moment for me. And I'm grateful that I was able to learn so quickly how integral trans women, specifically Black trans women, are to the movement of our rights, not only Black Lives Matter, but also just LGBTQ rights in general. Sorry about that. Wait 1 second. I'm so sorry. Sorry.
All good.
Where was I? Oh yes, and it actually led to having Saturday Church being my first feature film, and it being received so well. Also, I feel like helped me in future projects. I went right from this to the next production of Runaways they did at the Public Theater, actually. And MJ was doing Pose at the time, so she wasn't a part of this one. Which led to me meeting Jeremy O'Harris, who I'm going to be working with eventually once coronavirus, the COVID-19 in New York City is manageable. And he is a queer icon really in theater right now. And I really don't think I would be able to work with him unless it was for Saturday Church. For that, I'm grateful too for all the opportunities it has given me. And I just hope I can not only continue with my work to represent the ideals in Saturday Church, but also be an activist and do the work every day on the ground and being active in my government as well. Yes.
Again, thank you very much for taking your time. It was a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was really a pleasure to answer your questions.